Hello, friends. This is Shirzad starting our second live Q&A session. This has been an interesting week. You have been introduced to the judge. And so I want to, as usual, give you some tips for the practice and then start with the Q&A. So tips about working on the judge. There's a live demo that I do of my judge. Now, my judge is very aggressive. My judge goes like this. It's a very aggressive kind of a judge. And that may not be the style of your judge. For some people, their judge is much quieter than my judge. Your judge might be just, snooty, kind of above you. You're not even worth your judge's time. You're so disappointing, not even worth my time to work with you. What's wrong? So it could be a much quieter, more snooty, more contempt than my aggressive judge. So the judge has different characters, and so if yours doesn't look like mine, then look at yours, and how it could be a very different style. They are equally destructive in terms of their impact on us. So a, a quieter kind of a judge is actually a little more challenging to see and to know because at least mine is obvious. But if it's a quieter one, it can hide better. So they do a lot. They do a lot of damage to our self-confidence and wellness, regardless of the style that they have. Uh, one uh, One thing that I do want to say about this work is that came up last week. I promised to deal a little bit with the question of trauma. And so this work also, there was a warning about, hey, if you have a real traumatic past, really watch out so that you may not want to watch my judge visualization because that could be triggering and things like that. So we are always very careful about working with people who have had a background, a traumatic past. And as coaches, I just want to say that our training right now does not include helping you with working on trauma. So if there's a client that really comes with a strong background in trauma, you may want to work with a trauma-informed specialist to help with them because our teaching does not necessarily include that right now. Now, in our advanced training, we do run a session. There's a recording of us having a panel of therapists and coaches who are trauma informed and work with trauma, and we ask them the question of how do you incorporate the PQ work and technique into the work that you do with folks who have trauma, and the answers have a range, and I'll just give you a few examples. One is that PQ wrapping does give people a chance to regulate themselves if they are beginning to feel potentially that they're getting triggered. So ultimately, when you get triggered by trauma, you are not in the present moment. Your mind is taking you to a place of re-experiencing some stuff of past trauma, which by definition is not present because in this moment there is no danger to you. In this moment, nothing bad is happening to you, and your mind is going to places of just experiencing that trauma. So the antidote to that is becoming deeply present. And that's what a PQ rep is. PQ rep is about becoming deeply present in this moment. So one of the things one of the practices is to do really active kinds of PQ reps so that you become really, really present. Active PQ reps typically are ones with eyes open and potentially, sensing your touch or looking at how many colors there are in the room, or even getting on the floor and putting your hand on the floor and really feeling the floor. Uh, these are active PQ reps that make it easier to become present in this moment and realize that in this moment there is no danger to you. So one way that PQ reps are used is for that. The other is that as people do the PQ practice, what some of these trauma-informed specialists were telling us is that sometimes doing a lot of PQ work made their clients more ready and more able and feeling more safe to then bring in things that with which they had been traumatized, because now they feel that they have a foundation of groundedness that they could rely on. So they're not as terrified in actually allowing themselves to bring back stuff that they want to work on. So that kind of foundation really enhanced the people's willingness to work on stuff of trauma. The final thing, not the final thing, but one other very powerful thing that they shared is that in trauma work, the initial stages are about healing, really being compassionate with yourself for having been a victim of trauma, and being compassionate with yourself for that, and focusing on healing and nurturing yourself. At some point, trauma specialists do what is called post-traumatic growth. So what post-traumatic growth is, at some point we say, okay, I am going to shift my identity from the one who was a victim of trauma to asking myself, how could the stuff that I experience actually be converted into gifts, into positive things for myself, for my loved ones, and for the world? That's post-traumatic growth, where you actually have healed yourself enough to say, how can I convert what happened to me into positive things, into gifts and opportunities for myself and the world? That's what I have done. Like I grew up with a very traumatic childhood, and right now I wouldn't want anything to be different about my childhood, because I've converted all of those experiences into deep experiences of learning and deepening my compassion and understanding, so I can help other people. So that's a really important aspect that PQ brings. And finally, what we bring also is we normalize the experience of being a human. And so sometimes what happens with people who have experienced trauma is they feel fundamentally broken and different, like there's something fundamentally wrong about me for having these kinds of thoughts and stuff like that. And actually, when they do some of the PQ work, they realize, you know what? I am more normal and similar to other human beings as I thought, because actually having saboteurs and having these self-destructive thoughts and patterns is actually quite normal. That's every human being on the planet has it. So I'm not particularly broken and different. And so in that, we normalize the experience and allow people to move off of labeling themselves as an identity that's all about, I am the traumatized victim, to one that feels more normal and whole. So all of those are how PQ work help practitioners who are trauma-informed practitioners and specialists, and I hope that will help you too. So with that, I am ready for questions for the day, Sandy.
Hey, Sonia, you are up first. Welcome back. Please share where you're calling in from and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm calling from Budapest, and first I would like to thank you very much, Shirzad, for sharing your stories. The stories always make this methodology so much more alive, and I resonate a lot with your story with Judge, but also you mentioned that you come from very modest, from poverty. And my question would be, how, and I resonate with that as well. So sometimes I feel I have 11 saboteur, and it's money related saboteur. Like, so how did you actually become so wealthy and so remain so generous? And how would you connect this with saboteurs, your saboteurs? Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, it's not an 11th saboteur, it's actually still the judge, and the judge having a sense of scarcity, bringing a sense of scarcity, and a statement that says your current circumstances are not good enough for you to be happy. You'll be happy when. So that's the judge of circumstance. And at some point, ultimately, I needed to realize the sage saying, actually, you have everything you need to be extraordinarily happy now. And anything that you think that you need more of is a lie of the saboteur. Now, and research has shown that when people become initially, you need enough money to actually pay for, you know, a roof over your head, and so that you're not hungry and your kids and loved ones are not hungry. That you need to make enough money so that the basic necessities are taken care of. So we do want to focus on that for sure initially. But then once those basic necessities are met, research shows that making more and more and more and more and more and more money has zero correlation and zero connection with feeling happier and happier and happier and happier. And so that has absolutely been my experience. And so basically that's a time when you want to confront your judge saboteur saying, I don't have enough to be happy. I need something more to be happy. The question is, do you have enough money right now to have a roof over your head and eat enough and have your loved ones not worry about hunger and shelter? If the answer is yes, any more amount of money needing that to be happier is a lie of your judge, and you do not want to fall for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Up next, we have Dana. Dana, please come off mute and share where you're calling in from today.
Hello, Shirazad. I'm so honored to be able to talk to you and to join this group. I am joining from the Oakland Hills area, so I'm close to you in San Francisco. So thank you for the opportunity to ask this question too. So as I was working with the judge this week, it kept popping up like, how does the judge factor in with someone like me who suffers from occasional depression? And how can you tell if it's the judge or just depression?
Well, I suffered from clinical depression for almost the first 30 years of my life. And so the two saboteurs that were doing it, that were maintaining that, is the judge constantly saying, constantly beating me down. Shirzad, you're worthless, you're unworthy of love, you're unworthy of any success, you're a fraud, you're going to be discovered for the fraud that you are. All of those. Obviously, as those thoughts keep beating me up, of course I am going to feel depressed. And then my victim saboteur that came in and said, okay, now let's feel sorry for ourselves. Oh, poor me, oh, poor me, oh, poor me. And the victim saboteur was actually a very, that self-pity was very soothing for me. So that depression and self-pity that were caused by my judge and then my victim saboteur were very soothing and comforting. And it was a strategy in my childhood where, because I wasn't getting enough love, it was replacing love, which I couldn't get, with pity, which I could give myself. And pity was soothing and comforting. So that's what that became my strategy, until I realized actually self-pity was a very, very poor replacement for self-love. So I let go of the victim saboteur and the judge and shifted to deep unconditional self-love, which is what I feel for myself now. So so depression is absolutely contributed to by those. Having said that, I also do want to say that initially when I was diagnosed with clinical depression, I was so deeply in depression. My neurochemical imbalance was so strong that if I was doing this program, I wouldn't be able to be actually able to motivate myself to do the work, to do the PQ reps, to be able to begin to build mental muscles so that I would shift my brain chemistry. So initially, I did need antidepressants. So I do want to say sometimes coaches are very extreme about things and say, I don't believe in any medication, everything. And that's not fair, because sometimes people have such deep neurochemical imbalance that initially they could benefit from medication, from antidepressants, so that they can then, feel enough energy to do things like this program and PQ reps and rewiring their brain, so that they would shift their own brain chemistry and no longer need medication. So I want to make sure I put that caveat in also.
Yes, I'm also on medication, so that definitely helps. And when you said the word self-pity, that kind of clicked for me, right? And I know we're going to be learning more about how the judge works with our other saboteurs. So I really appreciate that connection. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for the question. Good luck.
Thanks, Dana, for your vulnerability today. Next up, we have Matthew Fuller. Matthew, please come off mute and share where you're calling in from.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Shazad. I'm calling in from London, the UK. Excited to be here. Thanks so much for taking my question. I love the work. I love it personally. I love the work that it allows us to do with our clients. But I'm feeling a dip today, and it's a dip that I've felt before. And I think it speaks to what you've talked about as creating that impact in a society where there's so much suffering going on. And so I guess the question is, how do you keep moving forward, or how do you stay clear on where you want to go, and when sometimes society isn't really valuing the work that we're trying to do because it's not on their radar, it's so out of touch and disconnected for them?
Yeah, I do. I am a big fan of history, and I read history a lot. And one of the things I'm aware of is that in in every generation, historians write, "Oh my God, our last generation was the perfect generation, and this new generation, everything is going downhill. These young people, they don't know anything." And so this idea of right now we are in bigger trouble than we have ever been has been with us forever. Humanity has from day one been brutal to humanity. Human beings have done horrible things to fellow human beings from the beginning of time. Right now, what's happening is because there's ubiquitous media, and media benefits from negative focus and sensationalism. We are bombarded by messaging that everything bad, 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 horrible things are happening, but I actually don't believe we are necessarily doing more brutality to each other than we did 30 centuries ago as human beings. It's the human condition. And what we are doing in PQ is finally a way of bringing healing to in a massively scalable, reachable, achievable way. For the first time in human history, we have a technology and a tool to have a vast majority of human beings have access to deep healing, so that we do not pass on to the next generation the brutality of the saboteurs that was passed on to us. So I am absolutely very optimistic about how we with PQ work can change the course of human history. If every person on the planet, if every child grew up with PQ, just imagine if every child grew up with PQ, with understanding that they can't trust every voice in their head, that there are saboteurs that they cannot necessarily trust, that there is such a thing as SAGE, that they have a choice, that they can build self-command muscle and PQ. What happens to that kid's ability to withstand bullying in school, to withstand bad teaching or even bad parenting? What kind of relationships would they build with other kids as they are growing up? As they grow up, which kind of politicians would they elect to the office? Do you think some of the politicians that are in the office today would be elected? What kind of a world will we construct together? So we have the solution right now, and it's for the first time in human history, because until now, the ways to heal ourselves have been so much more challenging and expensive and difficult to find. But now we have a massively scalable, practical way to have people heal themselves from their saboteurs that was passed on to them to their SAGE. So I am absolutely incredibly optimistic about what's possible, especially with our work. So what I do when I wake up in the morning, I do not spend an hour reading who did what to whom on the planet and getting myself all depressed. I ask myself, how do I be a force of good today? How do I be a force of positivity today in a world that needs positivity? And if I can touch one human being today to have them recognize their saboteurs and go to SAGE, then I'm a force of good. And I have no idea how much impact that will have, because maybe this person that I helped shift from their saboteur to SAGE is going to have children that will then have massive impact. It's going to have all sorts of other influences with people they interact with during the day that will have massive impact. I have no idea how the impact is, but all I know is today I want to have an impact and be a force of positivity in the world. And each of us can do that. And that's why we did this grant program, because we coaches hold the key to healing and saving our planet with the technology of PQ. So hopefully, so thank you for helping me live my vision in the world. And each of you are a manifestation of this. And imagine what's possible when we then spread the contagion here.
Thank you.
Right, next up we have Brian. Brian, if you can come off camera. Yep, come on camera and just share where you're calling in from today.
Hello, I'm coming in from Texas. So I remember seeing this in or reading this in the book as well. We were talking about in our pod Monday that especially myself, but even my two pod mates, feel like we don't really have a strong judge against myself. Like I don't think I'm hard on myself. I think I'm a very growth mindset type of a person, and I have definitely can see where I judge others. I definitely see where I judge circumstances and situations. How do I know if it's like, hey, my judge isn't so hard on myself, or is he just hiding really well and I just don't know it?
Yeah, chances are nobody has zero self-judge. It's just impossible. Actually, as a matter of fact, nobody has zero any saboteur. We all have some element of all saboteurs. Judging others typically is an indication that I am judging myself. And in my own case, I was really clear about this. My judge was constantly telling me, Shirzad, you're unworthy of love, unworthy of attention, unworthy of success, beating me down, 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 down. So I had no choice but to judge other people, because it would have been terrifying for me to be the only unworthy person. I had to bring down other people by finding what's wrong with them, so I would feel better about myself being so imperfect. So for me, it was so clear that part of the reason I needed to judge others was because I was judging myself. And on a day where I was able to be deeply feeling love for myself, it was so clear to me that when I'm feeling deep love for myself, I am automatically so much more generous with other people, so much more compassionate with other people, so much less judgmental of other people. So I've absolutely seen a connection in myself between self-judge and judging others. So if you're judging others, I pretty much promise you you're judging yourself, except it's a little bit less conscious. At the end, so how do you know at the end of the day if you have done a lot of things that didn't go well, made mistakes, failures happened, all of that thing, everything went wrong? When you stand in front of the mirror, the question is, how are you feeling about yourself? Now, the sage way is unconditional self-love. So no matter what kind of a day you've had, you look in the mirror and you feel deep, unconditional self-love. That's different from, first of all, saying, beating yourself up, being upset at yourself, which is a clear self-judge. But also, if you are numb to any of your own mistakes and failures, if you're just emotionally numb, and you feel superior, and you say, I've done nothing wrong, and everything has actually been perfect. If you're in denial of your own imperfections and feel superior because of it, or emotionally numb, those might be also ways of self-judgment, instead of truly seeing yourself as who you are. So in Sage, with discernment, see yourself as exactly who you are. Extraordinary, beautiful sage, and some off-putting saboteurs. I'm very aware of my off-putting saboteurs. And I'm very aware of my absolutely beautiful sage. I don't feel superior to anybody, and I don't feel inferior to anybody. I adore myself, I love myself, and I love other human beings too. So there are some subtleties here. Right now, if you don't see it, it's no problem at all. Focus on the stuff that you see. Chances are, with stronger and stronger radar of the self-observer, self-commander of your sage, you might begin to pick up on more subtle signs of the self-judge.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Great, thanks, Brian. And next up, we have Amanda. Amanda, if you can come on camera. Great.
Yeah, hi.
Amanda, where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Belgium. My question was to Shazad. So first, I wanted to really thank you for sharing your judge. That has really resonated with me, and I cried like a baby because that's how much it has touched me. And my question today is actually about PQing. When I PQ, the more that I do it, I find that my inner loud voices are becoming louder and louder. And I wonder, what does that mean? And is that part of a judge or another type of saboteur that could be in play there?
What is becoming louder and louder?
The inner voices. So like I'm trying to come back to myself, right?
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
find that my inner voices are only getting louder and trying
Yeah.
to overrule that quietness.
Yeah, the inner voices are not getting louder. What is happening is that these inner voices are screaming all the time, but your mind is so busy and so loud that you don't hear all these screams. You hear just a lot of noise. And not when you do PQ reps, you quiet some of the chatter so that these voices are heard more clearly. And and that could actually make it a little bit more unpleasant, because if I'm running away from everything and just keeping myself busy, I am not hearing all of these voices as clearly. But when I sit there and notice my breath and notice my touch, all of a sudden, all these voices of the judge saying, "Shirzad, you're an idiot," and unworthy, and all of that stuff, I'm not running away from it. I'm hearing it. And that might be unpleasant. And so some people say, when I sit down to do PQ reps, you know, I hear some of these things and they're unpleasant. Initially, that is the case. But if you just stick with it, what happens is you literally are rewiring the brain, because every time these voices come, you then say, no, I'm going to let that go. No, this is my PQ rep. And then the thought come, no. So you keep redirecting blood flow and oxygenation. You keep quieting a saboteur region of the brain, keep activating the sage. So these voices will absolutely get quieter and quieter as you go. And initially, it's not that they're getting louder, it's that you're hearing them better. Your hearing is getting better.
Yeah, it's just that my focus is becoming more challenging to achieve. Like at the beginning, I had a better focus but I see what you mean, right? Because it's like you need to first get through that in order to get that quietness more embraced, right?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
and we do want to make sure we don't judge ourselves for the speed of improvement here, because your saboteurs have been at it for years. And how long have we been at PQ repping? A week. So notice that our judge can have us feel impatient. You know, why am I not there already? Why am I not able to initially, there's going to be a bunch of, you know, changes that you'll experience. You may have a good day of doing PQ reps and feeling so relaxed. And then the next day you might do a PQ session and actually feel a little bit more agitated initially, because you heard more of these voices. And so these initial variations, you just want to be patient with it, because you're just beginning to learn a new sport. And as you learn backhand and forehand, initially you make a lot of mistakes, and then trust me, it just will settle, and you'll find such profound deepening of peace. So initially, be patient and make sure your judge doesn't come in and judge your practice as you're not doing it right, or you're not doing fast, you're not improving fast enough. What's wrong with you? You've already been doing it for a week. Why aren't you much better right now already, right? So we gotta watch out for the judge messing with us and make sure our practice remains fun for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Amanda. Shirzad, we have a question. One of our coaches cannot come on camera, so I'm going to ask this for Andy. What is the difference between ego and saboteurs? Can ego be a form of saboteurs speaking or acting for us?
Yeah, no, great. So what is ego and how does it relate to this? In general, we have made a very conscious effort to stay away from language and framing that turn some people off who could be our clients. And generally, there are two kinds of language and framing that turn off some people who could be your clients, and we don't want to turn them off unnecessarily. One is psychological language. So ego, what's ego? That's psychological language. And what ego is really is a collection of your saboteurs. So my ego self is the collection of my saboteurs that ends up being my false self. My sage is my true self. So we use sage saboteurs. We stay away from ego, which is more of a psychological language. It turns some people off. Then the other kind of language we want to stay away from is spiritual and new age language. Spiritual and new age language attracts some people, but it really turns off a lot of other people. So if you read the book, you'll see that we have very carefully used language and framing that is universal, that even the most skeptical, the most analytical, the most not believing in touchy-feely stuff say, wow, this is speaking to me. That's very intentional. So as a coach, if you want to increase your influence, you got to meet your audience where they are. We coaches feel very comfortable with spiritual language. We feel very comfortable with psychological language, but the head of technology of this company, a very analytical engineering background, doesn't believe in any emotional touchy-feely stuff, is going to be completely turned off. Why turn them off? Because they really need this work. So let's use framing and language that appeals universally to people, not just to us fellow coaches.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Shahzad. Next up, we have Sandra Crow. Sandra, you can come on camera and unmute. Wonderful. Sandra, where are you calling in from today?
Hi, I'm calling in from Rockville, Maryland.
Wonderful.
Shahzad, you so beautifully answered. Thank you. Shahzad, you so beautifully answered my question that I had asked earlier about trauma. And I wanted to follow up with a little bit more understanding about the brain and how this is happening when we're doing PQ reps, how it's influencing within the brain, perhaps specifically within the limbic system, and how it might be impacting trauma by being more present. If you have any more data about that, about what's actually happening in the brain with the PQ reps.
Yeah, it is so complex and so much goes into it that rather than simplifying it to a level of too simplistic, I would want to refer people who are really interested in the neuroscience of this to read there's I think a 20-page document on our website. It's written by a Harvard-trained neuroscientist on the neuroscience of PQRAP with a massive amount of third-party researchers. So I would, for those of you who are really interested in neuroscience in depth, I would suggest downloading that from our app and really digging in. Any answer I could give right now would just feel too simplistic, and I don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up we have Sankar. Sankar, please come on camera and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Shahzad. What an honor to talk to you, and what an incredible gift this program is. I feel very grateful to be part of this, so thank you. I actually wrote this question in the channel, so I'm just going to read it. It's a little bit similar to the question from the person from Texas, but I think it also is a little bit different. When I tried the exercise today, I was unable to visualize my judge. I think my judge, if I have one, is already quite weak. I had a happy, positive childhood, maybe a bit too positive, where I could do no wrong and I was always put on a pedestal. The unconditional love that my parents gave me, which I fully felt, especially from my mother, I think I carried it with me since they passed on several years ago. So in the visualization exercise, the best I could come up with was judging my wife for watching TV late into the night, binge watching Netflix and having ice cream, because I don't ever do that, especially on a regular weekday, as it affects the next day's schedule, etc. So I finally ended up with this self-righteous streak, which I think I have it in me. So is that my judge?
With what streak?
Self-righteous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, righteous. That's a little bit of that superiority, inferiority
Yeah.
thing I was talking about. The sage feels neither superior to any other human being nor inferior. The sage feels love for ourselves and love for other humans. There's a love for common humanity. Taking the question of judge, and this is not, this is also true for a client. When a client says, I don't have judge, I don't see much of the judge. Here's what I would tell a client who says, I don't think I have much of a judge. What I'll say is the following. Think about the judge of self, judge of others, judge of circumstances, meaning finding what's wrong and also feeling bad about what's wrong with you, with me, with you, or with circumstances. If I do not have any judge, that means I would go through the day finding nothing that upsets me about myself, nothing that upsets me about others, nothing that upsets me about any situation and circumstance in my life, including things that go wrong, failures that happen, things that I lose, all of that stuff. If that is the case, I would go through the day constantly feeling positive emotions of the sage, such as I would feel curiosity, empathy, love, compassion, joy of creativity, calm, clear-headed, laser-focused action, all of that stuff. That's how you'd experience life if you had no judge. Now, if that is your experience of life, and I would feel zero stress, by the way, because stress comes from the judge of circumstances that says, if the following thing happens, it's going to be bad, bad, bad. So let's be stressed because that thing might happen. That's judge of circumstance. So if you're going through the day not feeling any stress, upset, disappointment, or any of this stuff, you don't have the judge. Congratulations, you actually don't have other saboteurs either, because if you don't have the judge starts all the other saboteurs' action. If nothing is wrong, then you don't need the saboteurs to come and help you. Then you have no saboteur experience. Therefore, you don't have the judge. And that means your mastery level black belt. That means you do not need this work. Now, I personally am not there yet. I do feel stressed during the day. I do feel get upset at things. I do feel my judge and my other saboteurs. So I'm still working on it. And so that would be the sign. Any negative emotion that you experience starts with the judge. So if you're feeling any stress, the question is, what is stressing you out about this? And there is the judge of circumstances saying, if this thing goes wrong and failure happens, that's bad, bad, bad. You should be stressed about it. That's the judge of circumstance saying that failure is bad. Because the sage would say, failure is not bad. I can convert failure into gift and opportunity. Let's go. There's no stress, right? So I always look backwards from, are there any negative emotions? And if so, there is a judge involvement in that. If there are no negative emotions, then there is no judge.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shizad. That helps. I think I'll work on trying to identify my judge. I'll go a bit deeper. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sankar. Next up, we have Gina. Gina, please unmute and share with us where you're calling in from today.
I'm from snowy Montreal. So thank you for this program. What a gift. I had a conversation yesterday with meditators, and I encounter they express some resistance about the personification of the saboteur, of the judge, because they shared that they were used to labeling their voice only as a thought or emotion and nothing else. So, and they felt that naming it as a judge would probably bring more power to that thing. So I don't know how you would address this concern.
These are all tools, and we want to be flexible about how people stick with the spirit of what we are trying to do and adjust the tool as needed. What we are trying to do is stop giving so much power and credence to the voice of the judge. Before I started identifying my judge, when my judge said, Shirzad, you're unworthy of any love, I used to think that is my voice and say, I am unworthy of any love. When I started putting a label on it, then I was able to say, my judge is saying I'm unworthy of any love. There's profound power to labeling the voice and saying, that is not my true voice. That is not the voice of truth. That's just the voice of this character over here. And that is not my true self. That is not the voice of truth. Because I was looking at myself, very highly educated, intelligent human being, and I used to think every thought generated by this brain that's so amazingly educated is worthy and trustworthy, until I said, no, 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 this brain is producing a lot of horrible stuff. And a lot of it fits under this judge character. This is the judge talking, it's not me. If that does not help this particular person in creating a separation and disempowering their voice, then ask them what would. And we let them choose their own way. But what they do need to say is, how do I separate these thoughts and say, no, not credible. This is not the voice of truth. I'm going to label it as something and let it go.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
All right, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Next up, we have Bronca. Bronca, welcome. Please share where you're calling in from today. Bronca, we can't seem to hear you. All right, why don't we work on your audio? I'm going to move on to Greg for now, and let's see if we can work on your audio. Greg, do you mind coming off mute and sharing where you're calling in from and ask your question, Trish?
Are you there?
Yes.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Thank you, Shazad, for everything you do. My question is, it appears that there are two parts to a PQ rep: starting or knowing to start the PQ rep, and two, being in the PQ rep, which feels to me like the term being present. My question, will you compare and contrast being present versus being in a PQ rep? And which is more important, starting the PQ rep or being present in the PQ rep? Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a very nuanced question, and I really appreciate it. So what we are doing here with the PQ rep, there's a part of the brain, the middle prefrontal cortex. When you activate that region of the brain, that's the only part of the brain that's capable of self-observation. So that's the self-observer, self-commander that we are energizing. That's what I mean by when we go to self-command. We energize a part of our brain, the middle prefrontal cortex, that rises above us and looks at us. And that's that we then command our mind to focus on a physical sensation, do a PQ rep, and continue with us in that mode. There's a reason why in some Eastern traditions there is there's a third eye that is drawn over here. There's a third eye that ends up exemplifying when this becomes very strong. When it becomes very strong, the experience that you will have, and this is an experience that I had after doing a bunch of PQ reps. One day I was going through my day and lots of crises were happening, and all of a sudden I noticed that I was handling the crisis, but a part of me was over here watching me handling the crisis and commanding me how to handle the crisis, but it wasn't lost in the crisis. I wasn't going up and down with the crisis. I was steadily observing and commanding. And it was the third eye phenomenon. The self-observer, self-commander was active and then telling me how to deal with the situation. So basically what qualifies for a PQ rep is the self-observer experience continues with us. So if you're lost in an experience, you're not doing PQ reps. If you are witnessing yourself focus on something and the witness is still present, then it's a PQ rep, because the self-observer, self-commander, middle prefrontal cortex is still online. So an example is, if you're listening to gorgeous music If you're lost in the experience of enjoying the music, that's a wonderful experience, but it is not building your self-command because the self-observer is gone. You're lost in the experience. So you don't zone out. With PQ wrapping, you zone in. So if you're listening to the music, for example, you could say, I am going to focus on the drum as the instrument. And I'm going to witness the drum every time it comes in and experience it, and know that I'm experiencing it. I'm never lost in the experience. I'm always present to the experience. That's what qualifies it as PQ wrap. Otherwise, I'm having a joyful experience and I'm lost in it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great. Next up, we have Branka. Branka, let's see if it,
Hello, can you hear me
There we
now?
go.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm calling from Croatia. Thank you. I have a question regarding OCD. Can it be treated with exercise activities as PQ reps? Because from my understanding, it's related to saboteurs like hypervigilant, stickler, and controller. So any data on this? Because today it seems to be more common, people with OCD issues. Thank you.
Yeah, when you think about it, that a lot of what saboteurs are is there's this, we are on a spectrum. We're on the extreme version of the spectrum. There's a psychological term put on it, such as an OCD, but it's always a spectrum. So people who have a, let's say you mentioned several saboteurs, say the stickler saboteur. So the stickler saboteur is in the spectrum as an example of OCD. Now, if somebody's extreme stickler saboteur, chances are they will be labeled as somebody who has an OCD condition. And the question is, where in the spectrum are you? And again, when something is really, really extreme, it might benefit from medication. If something, then depending on where on the spectrum is, you may not need the medication. All you need is the strategies that we teach you for doing PQ reps and specific strategies for that saboteur. Same thing with hypervigilant. Hypervigilant brings a lot of anxiety. We are all in the spectrum of hypervigilant. All of us are somewhere in the spectrum of hypervigilant and feeling anxiety for things that we shouldn't feel anxiety for. When it is really, really extreme, you may be in such a deep level that you may need medication to initially turn down the reaction that you're having so that you can build a lot of powerful mental muscles so that you no longer need medication. So the main point I'm making is we're all on the spectrum. And the question is where on the spectrum we are and how extreme it is.
Let's say most commonly OCD, like people in their house that they need to check 20, 50 times if the stove is on or off, micro or something similar. I should say, for example, in those cases, medication, it's not needed, but in people, their characteristic, its saboteurs are really so strong and going quite radical.
Yeah.
So
I always say one thing is we see how, and if people are able to use PQ techniques in a way that resolves their issue, and if they just can't, then I would always look for maybe this is extreme enough to require medication. That includes, by the way, again, I mentioned like feeling depressed, having that victim saboteur, all of that stuff. Where in the spectrum are we? Is it a place where we can't get out of bed? In which case we may need medication and help, or is it somewhere where I can actually do these exercises and feel the relief and no longer need that intervention? So it's always a case-by-case basis.
okay, thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you, Branka. Shirzad, we have quite a shy audience today. A lot of coaches declining our request, but we do have this one top upvoted question that we'd like for you to answer. And it is, could you please address the idea of exiling parts of us like the judge and saboteur? From traditional IFS parts work, I understand that exiling parts of our psyche or being against them, referring them in derogatory terms, is counterproductive. Is there a way to be more integrating toward our judge part, or instead of hating or exiling them?
I mentioned this, I responded to this partially in the initial comments that I made in the beginning of my first Q&A session, and I went into some depth about, are we rejecting the saboteurs in us? And I said, no, we are not rejecting the saboteurs in us. We are giving them a new role. And the new role that we are giving our saboteurs is we are converting them into our mental fitness trainers, into our sage trainers, into our black belt Jedi trainers. So if my judge comes in 100 times into my mind, 100 times I'll say, oh, no, 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 no. You're not going to call me an idiot again. No, no, no. You're the judge. I'm not going to do that. Thank you for the reminder for me to do a PQ up right now. So my judge shows up 100 times, and 100 times I'm going to intercept him and say, no, 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 no. You're not going to call me worthless. I've heard that before. I'm not going to let you do that. Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to do a PQ up. And every time he comes and I do a PQ up, I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So I am not upset at him. If I got upset at him, I would be judging him, and it would fuel the negativity. We do not reject our saboteurs. We give them a new role. And the new role is there are mental fitness trainers. Now, and here's the thing, the judge saboteur in particular, my judge saboteur has never, ever, ever changed what he tells me. He has never changed anything about what he tells me. He says exactly the same things he has always told me. Shirzad, you're worthless. You're unworthy of love. You're unworthy of success. You're an idiot. All of that stuff. I can't hug him every time he comes to me and says those things. No, I am very clear that I do not want to get into an argument with him every time. I've had that discussion. I have looked my judge in the eye and say, Judge, thank you so much for helping me survive my childhood. My judge was incredibly helpful for me surviving my childhood. All of our saboteurs are really helpful for us surviving our childhood. They are our survival strategies. So I have had that conversation with my judge, with my victim, with my other saboteurs. Thank you so much for helping me survive my childhood. And the methodology that you use, you calling me an idiot every time you see me, is no longer helpful. Therefore, I'm going to give you a new role. So every time you show up now, I'm going to make fun of you and say, hey, what took you so long? I haven't heard from you for a while. Thank you so much for the reminder for me to do a PQ up. I am not rejecting him and exiling him. I am extremely vigilant in giving him a new role, and I'm not getting upset at him. No, 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 no. That would be the judge. And I know that till the end of my life, the judge will exist. I guarantee you in the last hour of my life, my judge will have whispered something in my head about, you didn't do enough in this life, or whatever was wrong with you. I know that already. And what am I gonna do? No, 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 no. There you go again. I'm gonna do a PQ up. Thank you for the reminder of doing a PQ up. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you, Shirzad. And that brings us to the end of our session today.
Okay. Very powerful, range of questions. That means, I'm so delighted, so much engagement with this work that we are doing on learning. And the work, especially with the judge, is very courageous work, because most human beings go to their graves never admitting that they have the judge and that a lot of the assumptions of the judge are false assumptions. And so it's courageous work that we are doing. And I want to appreciate you for doing that work, for putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, growing your sage, and then intercepting your saboteurs, so that we can do more of this for human beings on this planet who very much need this work. Thank you for helping heal the planet and save our planet with me. Take good care of yourself. I'll be reading your contributions in the community. I get so much out of reading your notes in the community because it's so inspiring how engaged you are. And I'll see you next week. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.